Over the past 500 days, I've lived without online entertainment by myself. No scrolling, no binge watching, no gaming, no fake productivity, no research without taking action. This simple act unlocked the time and drive to take up running and run 12 marathons in 12 months, take up language learning and become conversationally fluent in Spanish in 7 months, build an online business to achieve time and location freedom, and get in the best shape of my life. There were many reasons I wanted to live like this. It gave me hundreds of hours back every year. It made my brain crave progress, but there was something far more powerful that this gave me that I did not expect. Something that allowed me to progress far faster than I thought was ever possible and live a far more peaceful life. This was all of the attention I now had back that I could reinvest into myself and my goals. It felt like I was a racehorse and I just put the blinders on. There was nothing distracting me, no temptations. The only thing I had to do was run forward as quickly as possible. This story I'm about to share with you is going to explain the power of your attention and how it is the secret for fast, exponential, peaceful growth. See, there were two young men. These two young men were fishermen. They grew up in a poor fishing village and they both had the same goal. They both wanted to be the wealthiest fishermen in the world. One day, a higher power came down to them. This higher power gave them an opportunity of a lifetime. The higher power offered them an orb. Now, this wasn't an ordinary orb. This orb allowed them to see all of the information in the world. They could simply ask the orb and the orb would tell them anything that they needed to know. The first man took the orb. He said, absolutely, I'm going to take this because the more information I have, the more powerful I'll be, the quicker I can progress and become the best, the wealthiest fisherman in the world. So he took this orb. The second man said, no, I do not want this orb. When I need the information, it will present itself to me, but I do not need this right now. The first fisherman spent the entire night staring at the orb, trying to figure out what is the best fishing equipment. What is the perfect fishing technique? He received all of this information about exactly how he could become the best, wealthiest fisherman in the world. The next day he got up and he went into the town and he bought all of this new gear. He bought the best fishing gear he could possibly find, the best bait. He spent the entire day in the fishing village buying the perfect gear. The second fisherman went out as usual and he kept throwing the line in. By the end of the day, the second fisherman had caught around 20 fish. He had 20 fish to his name, while the first fisherman got to the end of the day and he had a lot of high quality gear. Over the next few weeks, the first fisherman became obsessed with the orb because the orb didn't just tell him the perfect fishing techniques, the perfect gear. It also told him everything that was happening within his village, every single person, all of the scandals, every single piece of news, everything that was happening within his world, the orb would tell him. He would spend hours and hours every day researching, finding the perfect fishing gear, finding the perfect technique, seeing what everyone else in the village was doing. While he had all this information, the first fisherman was really struggling. He had all of this new gear, all of these new techniques, but he didn't understand how to use it. He'd been spending all day in his room staring at the orb. He didn't actually understand how to use the gear effectively and how to get the most out of it. See, while the first fisherman was really struggling, the second fisherman here was doing well. He was getting slightly better each day. With each cast, he was getting slightly stronger. He understood the waters better. He understood the fish better. And over time, he continued to catch more and more and more fish. And what he realized is he was actually starting to make some pretty good money, but he was limited by the fact that it was only him out there fishing. So with the extra money he earned from these fish, he decided to bring his friend on board. He decided to add a friend and together the two of them set out and they started fishing. And with the knowledge acquired from this fisherman, he was able to pass that knowledge down to his friend and together they were able to start catching a pretty good amount of fish. Now, as the weeks went on, this fisherman kept changing his rods. He kept changing his fishing technique, but nothing improved. He was in a worse position than he was at the very start. Now, as this man does every single night, he looked into his globe. He looked at what everyone else was doing in his village, and he noticed something interesting. There was a man in his village, and this man was making far more money than he thought was possible. This man had a very, very large house, and he had a horse and carriage. This was quite the luxury. But he looked at this man and he noticed that this man wasn't a fisherman. This man was a farmer, And he looked at what the farmer was doing and he saw that all the farmer was doing was he was planting crops and then he would just sit there and wait. And after a few months, he could harvest these crops and he could sell it for thousands and thousands of dollars. This was passive income. This was a far easier way of him getting to these riches. He realized if he truly wanted to be rich, he shouldn't be a fisherman because fishermen have to cast their line in and spend all day casting and reeling in fish. If he truly wanted to be rich, he needed to be a farmer. So he decided to leave the fishing village behind and buy himself a farm. He knew that it was far easier to be a farmer. You didn't have to cast your line in all day. You just plant a few crops, you wait, and then after a while you sell them all and you become rich, just like the other man. Now, while the first fisherman set off with his new career as a farmer, the second fisherman got back to work. Him and his buddy kept reeling in, and every single day they got a little bit stronger. And as they got stronger, they could cast their lines in further and further and further. And the further they could cast their lines in, the deeper into the ocean they could get. And the deeper they could get, the more and bigger fish that they could collect. So very quickly they realized that if they wanted to catch more bigger fish, they had to go deeper into the ocean. Now, with all the extra money they were making from these extra fish they were catching, they decided to buy themselves a boat. This boat would allow them to go deeper into the ocean and catch bigger and bigger fish. So this is what they did. They set out on their new boat and they caught bigger and bigger and bigger fish. And as a consequence, they continued to make more and more and more money. Now, while the second fisherman was progressing nicely, the first fisherman was in a bit of trouble here. See, he realized he'd never run a farm in his entire life. He had absolutely no idea what he was doing. And while he didn't have to cast his line in every day, he had new problems. He never had to worry about the fertility of the soil before. He'd never had to worry about the lack of rain. And very, very quickly, he found that his crops were all beginning to die and he was making less money than ever before. Distraught with the failure of his current farm, he went back to the orb and he searched for better answers. What he found was another man in his village. But this man didn't have to worry about the fertility of the soil. This man didn't have to worry about the weather. And this man was making more money than the previous man. See, what this man was doing is he was raising cows. This man had cows, and cows didn't rely upon weather. They didn't rely upon fertile soil. All they needed was a little bit of food, and they kept producing milk over and over and over again. So this was the answer. The first fisherman went back to the village and he bought himself a cow. The cow was going to be the way that he could get rich because he didn't have to worry about casting his line in every day. He didn't have to worry about infertile soil. He didn't have to worry about bad weather because he had a cow that would keep producing milk over and over and over again. And this is how he was going to become rich. Now, as the months went by, the second fisherman was catching more and more and more fish. He was becoming wealthy, but he had a new problem here. The boat simply couldn't fit the amount of fish that he was catching. He needed a solution to this new problem. So what he did is he went back to the village and he bought himself a bigger boat. With all of the earnings he had from these bigger, larger fish, he could buy himself not just a bigger boat, but he could buy himself a crew. He could buy himself a crew of fishermen, and together they could catch bigger and more fish and make more and more and more money. So that's what he did. He set off to the sea with his new bigger boat, his new crew, and he kept catching more and more and more fish and making more and more money. Just a few months after the fisherman had bought himself a cow, he noticed the cow started getting sick. And the cow got sicker and sicker and sicker. And as the weeks went by, the cow produced less and less milk. And it got to the point where the cow stopped producing milk completely. The fisherman was absolutely distraught. He thought, I hate having a cow. All of my income is coming from one single animal. And if this animal doesn't produce milk, then I don't get paid. This is absolutely horrible. I hate these problems. So not knowing what to do, he went back to the orb and he searched for the solution. And what he found was a man in his village. This man was making more money than any of the other farmers before him. Not only that, this man didn't have to worry about one single animal earning him all this money. He didn't have to worry about the climate. He didn't have to worry about the fertility of the soil. And he didn't even have to lift a finger. He had all of these people making him rich for him. The fisherman quickly realized that this was the solution. If he really wanted to become rich, he had to become a fisherman. So he went back to his fishing village, he cast out his line, and he started catching fish. At the end of the day, the first fisherman had worked all day and caught just 5 fish, while the second fisherman hadn't lifted a finger, and had caught thousands of giant fish. I used to be like this first fisherman. I spent all of my day looking at what everyone else was doing, finding the next shiny object, starting a business, quitting, starting all over again. But at the end of the day, I was left back at square one, not earning any money, not progressing forward, the exact same person year after year after year. As soon as I got rid of all of this distraction, all of this reactive information, and I just put the blinders on, allocated my attention just to the few things I knew was going to move me forwards towards the goals I was trying to hit, this became so easy and such a peaceful process. Once you know the goal that you're trying to hit and you know that the current vehicle that you're in will get you to that goal eventually, it does not serve you to be receiving all of this reactive information, seeing all of these different shiny objects. All that there really is to do is to continue to take action in the current vehicle that you're in. Over time, you'll encounter new problems and you'll solve those problems. You keep moving forward and you keep progressing. But if you're looking at all of these shiny objects, if you're looking at what everyone else is doing, and all that happens is it makes you quit what you're currently doing, start all over again, it's not helping you whatsoever. There's nothing more frustrating than constantly questioning what you're currently doing, constantly wanting an easy solution, constantly changing to that easy solution and realizing it's not easy whatsoever and continuing to hop and hop and hop and hop. It is so much more peaceful, so much easier and more enjoyable if you just sit in the vehicle you know is going to get you to that goal and continue to take action forward, identify problems, take action on potential solutions, and continue to progress forward until we achieve that North Star. Now, if you're an online entrepreneur and you want help progressing your business really quickly without having all of these shiny objects and distractions in the way, you can join the Modern Monk community for free. The first thing to do is figure out what is your North Star goal and can your vehicle actually get you to that North Star? If it can, we figure out what are the exact set of inputs required for you to hit that North Star. Then we remove all of your distraction, put the blinders on without relying on motivation and willpower so you can progress extremely quickly. So if that's interesting to you, you can join the Modern Monk community for free. I'll leave a link in the description below for that. For everyone else, if you want to see how I did 4 hours of deep work every day without distractions for over 100 days, then you can check out this video right here. So I'll either see you in the Modern Monk community or in that video. Cheers.